How did Hitler imagine the post-war world if he were defeated? He imagined a map without the Reich at its center. And on that map, two shadows grew longer with every passing year: America and Russia. Not allies, not friends, opposites, drawn together by fear and driven apart by belief. He saw them as twin giants, rising from the ruins, glaring at one another across oceans and borders. Their hatred, he thought, wouldn't be about land alone. It would be about ideas. Capitalism against communism, markets versus revolution, freedom as a banner, equality as a threat. Each convinced the other was a lie. Each certain history would vindicate them. He believed they would not merely compete, they would prepare. Arms, industry, science. He pictured their laboratories humming in secret, engineers poring over blueprints that were not quite new, not quite theirs. Long-range missiles arcing over continents, jet fighters carving the sky in cold metal lines, rocket engines screaming their way into the upper air. Weapons not designed to win a battle, but to decide the fate of nations without a shot fired on the ground. He saw them copy German designs, refine German theories, recruit German minds, the ones who survived the collapse and fled westward or were captured in the east. He believed that whoever mastered these tools, ballistic missiles, jet propulsion, long-range bombing doctrines, would not just defend themselves, they would dictate terms. They would dominate the lesser nations, as he called them. Nations that would have to choose a flag to shelter under, or be shaken apart by the wind. And what of the old empires? Britain? France? In Hitler's telling, their age was ending. He believed their pride would not survive the bill that history handed them. He predicted statesmen in fine suits would trade prestige for protection, and that men like Churchill, men he loathed and envied, would in the end sell out their countries, not as traitors, but as realists, pragmatists. Britain and France, he imagined, would still fly their flags, still speak with ceremony, still commemorate victories in marble and bronze. But behind the curtain, the invisible wires would run to Washington or to Moscow. He imagined them as puppets, respectable puppets. Puppets they could still dance, just not to their own music. If the center fell, what of the edges? What of his allies? Italy, Japan. He believed they would fall with him, toppled by the same wind that would rip the eagle from its perch. Italy, fascism without victory, would taste humiliation and faction, and the old Italian puzzle returning: how to govern a country that is three countries pretending to be one. Japan, proud, relentless Japan, would feel the full force of a war it began with thunder and ended with ash. And yet even here, he left a door cracked open, a path back. Japan, he thought, could still grasp for dominance in Asia, not by ideology, but by position. Geography is destiny. He held to that with iron certainty. China, he believed, would be the proving ground. If Japan could not conquer it, perhaps it could shape it, divide it, leverage it. He imagined a long contest, a grinding struggle for ports, resources, and prestige from the Yellow Sea to the South China Sea. The empire he envisioned turned into a sphere of influence, stitched together by trade and pressure, and the quiet threat of ships on the horizon. Italy's hope, in his mind, was not revival through conquest, but relevance through location. The Mediterranean, Mare Nostrum, would remain a hinge of history. Suez, Gibraltar, the warm water lanes where empires once learned to breathe. If Italy could not command it, it might still arbitrate it. Ports, pipelines, alliances. A middle power with old ambitions, selling access to sea and sky. There is a darker thought below all this, and he nursed it. He believed that the war, even if lost, had set the terms for the new century. That his enemies would adopt what they hated. That secret police would flourish under new banners. That propaganda would refine itself into science. That borders would move not only on maps, but inside minds. He imagined the world divided into blocs, steel belts wrapping the earth. military alliances with friendly names and unfriendly clauses, nations signing treaties they could not read in full, conferences that promised peace while approving budgets that guaranteed anything but. And he imagined the clock tick. A crisis in Berlin, a test in the Mediterranean, a standoff in the Pacific, a missile paraded on a winter morning under gray skies, a satellite blinking in the dark, a metal eye that never sleeps. Competition would not be a fever that breaks, but a climate that endures. Each side telling itself the same story. If we do not build, we will be destroyed. If we do not act, they will. If we do not harden, we will crack. But this was not prophecy. It was projection, his projection. It revealed less about the future and more about the man imagining it. He could not picture a world where small nations mattered except as pawns. He could not imagine an empire ending without a successor empire rising in its place. He did not foresee the stubbornness of memory, the power of decolonization, the way people who had fought under other people's flags would one day design their own. He misread Britain and France, not in their weakness, but in their transformations. He could not imagine that retreat could sometimes be a repositioning, that influence could be exerted through money, through culture, through intelligence networks, through the subtleties of law and finance. Puppets don't build markets in their image. Puppets don't craft institutions that outlive them. He misunderstood Japan's future strength, that it could wield power without empire, that consumer goods and credit can travel farther than battleships, that a rebuilt nation could, by choosing restraint, master the very tools he idolized: industry, innovation, precision, without the boot. He misunderstood Italy too. Chaotic, yes, but enduring. A place where culture outlasts regimes, where governments fall but a nation's gravity remains, pulling trade, tourism, and diplomacy into its orbit through soft power he never valued. And yet, in another sense, he was not entirely wrong. America and Russia did rise. They did glare at each other across the world. They did race upwards, first to the stratosphere, then to the stars. Scientists did change sides like chess pieces swept by a hand. Missiles did stand in silos, cold and patient. The world did live for decades with a question that hummed like a transformer in the dark. If it comes to it, will they? The question bent culture, politics, education, art. It shaped budgets, maps, childhoods, drills in classrooms, shelters in backyards, spy planes and contrails too high to see. And because of that hum, because of that tension, whole regions found room to maneuver. New nations entered the conversation. Non-alignment became a strategy, not a shrug. The space between giants was not empty, it was opportunity. What did Hitler think the world would look like if he lost? He thought it would look like a different kind of battlefield, cleaner on the surface, colder at the core. He imagined giants in a staring contest, lesser nations shivering in their shade, old empires kneeling, former allies scrambling for second chances in old waters and new markets. He imagined technology as the new general, fear as the new currency, and the future as a contest to be won by machines he had only begun to build. But history is more stubborn than a single man's imagination. It borrows from the plans of tyrants only what it must, and discards the rest. In the end, his vision tells us something he would never admit. He believed the world could not escape the gravity of his war. And yet, for all the missiles raised and flags planted and speeches made, the world did what he could not. It survived him. And then, it kept going.